Today, I'm at Whole Foods Market, infamous for being the nation's first certified organic grocer and self-proclaimed as America's healthiest grocery store. You may think of Whole Foods by its clean, aesthetic layout, its infamous hot bar, its viral brown butter cookie latte, and its aisles and aisles stocked full of products that, if you're anything like me, you could spend hours looking at. Or maybe you're more familiar with the store's less glamorous side, evidenced by its reputation of whole paycheck, as it sells products like this Manuka honey for $40.99. It's been over 8 years since the infamous grocer was acquired by tech giant Amazon. So today, we're investigating, is Whole Foods still worth it? To truly understand Whole Foods Market, we first need to dive a little bit into its history. And before your eyes go glossy, I promise that this is actually a really interesting story that starts with psychedelics and a vegetarian commune. Whole Foods was founded in 1978 in Austin, Texas by founders John Mackey and his girlfriend at the time, Renee Harding, two counterculture enthusiasts with a unique vision to create a natural market where consumers were willing to spend extra for high-quality, specialized goods. Whole Foods grew very quickly, and in 1992, it went public at a $100 million valuation. Founder John Mackey had a sense of pride in the fact that Whole Foods was a special corporation that truly cared and made a real difference in the world. A dichotomy that many critics just don't believe is possible with big corporations. Regardless of your thoughts on whether Whole Foods was a quote-unquote good corporation, the reality remains true that we have Whole Foods to thank for bringing organic produce mainstream in the United States. With its success, of course, came massive levels of competition, and in 2017, Mackey was essentially forced into a situation where he had to sell the company, and he ended up deciding to sell it to tech giant Amazon for $13.7 billion. To this day, Mackey maintains that all stakeholders won in this deal because of the synergies that were created. But is this really the truth? Well, a few improvements were seen almost immediately after the acquisition. Prices were slashed, and Amazon immediately rolled out benefits like Prime member discounts. But while the prices were cut, they still remain generally higher than other much larger grocery stores like Walmart and Aldi. So let's dive into what sets Whole Foods apart today in terms of value and see if it's still worth it over 8 years after the Amazon acquisition. One of the biggest things that sets Whole Foods apart is its emphasis on quality. It implements certain sourcing standards. So all seafood, for example, must be wild caught or responsibly farmed. Meat is always traceable and prioritizes animal welfare. And the company also claims that it's completely antibiotic-free. Even eggs must come from cage-free hens or better. Whole Foods has also banned over 300 food ingredients, including various food colorings, artificial flavors, and hydrogenated oils. But my question here is this all just a health halo? The sourcing standards for the meat sound great, but it might just all be a marketing ploy. The company still faces a lawsuit that was launched back in 2022, which claims that their no antibiotics ever meat actually does contain antibiotics. And the list of banned food ingredients sounds great. Makes it sound like you could pick almost anything off of the shelf and rest assured that it won't contain any chemicals or additives that are known to cause harm. However, this really isn't the case. Whole Foods certainly still sells ultra-processed foods, which are linked to metabolic diseases and negative health consequences, including obesity, type 2 diabetes, and fatty liver disease. This leads us to sort of an existential question about idealism in business. Can we really expect for Whole Foods not to sell ultra-processed foods when the demand for them clearly exists? Maybe it's just the nerdy side of me, but I actually find this to be a fascinating aspect of Whole Foods' business model. Let me explain. Founder John Mackey believed that business isn't idealist, meaning that in order to run a successful business, you have to meet the market where it is. After all, you can't really do any good in the world if you're too idealist and you impose your own beliefs upon a market where demand for them doesn't exist, because then you have no demand and you're not going to have a business at all. But the tension lies in the fact that people demand goods that aren't necessarily the healthiest for them. As John put it, I see what sells, and it's oftentimes the least healthy things that we're selling that sell at Whole Foods. So while in an ideal world, Whole Foods would only be selling healthy products, it may just not be realistic from a business standpoint. I totally get this point, but I think that acknowledging it creates a tension between the marketing versus reality of Whole Foods. If some of the company's best-selling products are also its least healthy, then the trademark America's healthiest grocery store just feels plain misleading. This is a complex, almost philosophical problem that a lot of companies face. And like I said, I find this super fascinating, so I'm interested to hear what you think in the comments. But let's get back to what sets Whole Foods apart. And the next thing on the list is its 365 private label brand. The company has ramped up its offering of private label goods and added hundreds of 365 branded items to its product line. These products tend to be cheaper than comparable goods, so as a consumer, it's definitely something that I would keep an eye on when you're shopping at Whole Foods. Another thing that pre-acquisition set Whole Foods Market apart was its emphasis on culture. John Mackey actually stated that culture is what creates long-term competitive edge in a business. But as is true with most acquisitions, cultural changes surely must have happened after the acquisition with Amazon, right? Well, in the last several years, many Whole Foods employees have criticized the corporatization of the company, citing high levels of employee surveillance and an emphasis on speed over genuine customer connection and quality. It seems the company culture has taken a hit post-acquisition, although Whole Foods does still maintain culture to be one of the most important drivers of value in its most recent impact report. The next standout feature for Whole Foods is convenience, which has undoubtedly improved since the acquisition by Amazon. The company obviously now offers online shopping, home delivery, and pickup options, as well as Prime member discounts and in-store deals for Prime members. This convenience does come with a cost, though, as it removes the community aspect from food and grocery. People used to be much more in touch with their local communities through grocers and through knowing their farmers and where their food was really coming from. I think we could point to a lot of other societal changes that have shifted us away from this idealism in grocery stores, and I think it still remains true that Whole Foods is meeting the customer where it is with these online offerings. But I do still think that there's value in going in person to pick out your produce and taking a certain level of pride in your culinary creations. The next point is an interesting one. Amazon seems to be trying to leverage its tech brand to bring new technology into the Whole Foods stores. However, this has been met with mixed results. The store launched a Just Walk Out technology in 2021, where you could literally walk into the grocery store. There were cameras and sensors everywhere tracking the things that you picked up, and you could just walk out of the grocery store without even looking at your wallet. Whole Foods faced some backlash from consumers about this and ultimately ended up pulling the program in 2024, claiming that it wanted to create a more consistent experience across different locations. The grocer now offers Amazon One biometric payments where you can pay with your palm. The intention of this is clear. They hope that you'll buy more because you never even have to take a look at your wallet. This has also launched backlash due to privacy concerns. All in all, the tech giant seems to be struggling to seamlessly blend technology into the Whole Foods stores in a way that consumers actually respond well to. Personally, I think that this will be a very interesting point to keep an eye out for over the next few years. One final point that I wanted to touch on in terms of differentiation is Whole Foods' claimed prioritization of local brands. As I mentioned earlier, Whole Foods' initial market success came from meeting demand for consumers who wanted a highly specialized quality good. Post-Amazon acquisition, many smaller suppliers felt pushed out as bigger, more national brands took more shelf space. And in fact, due to the increased competition, many of the brands that used to only be found in Whole Foods can now be found at bigger grocers around the United States. That said, some degree of specialty still remains, and the supermarket has actually added thousands of local brands over the past few years. Whole Foods even has local foragers who scout local products and brands, allowing smaller businesses to launch in just a few Whole Foods stores rather than having to launch nationally immediately. Whole Foods Market also launched an accelerator program back in 2022 to help emerging brands to grow and even to provide capital to some of them. This is a program that I personally admire because I think that the food space is just ripe for innovation. So given all of this, is Whole Foods still worth it today? Well, for produce, my verdict here is that it is worth it. The quality of produce at other grocery stores just honestly doesn't stack up. And in terms of pricing, Whole Foods prices for produce are honestly comparable and sometimes even less expensive than other big retailers. I'd of course encourage you to stick to organic, well-sourced produce, but that shouldn't be hard to find here. Packaged goods, however, require some more attention. Despite recent marketing claims, you still need to take a look at the actual ingredients to make sure that you're avoiding ultra-processed foods, as Whole Foods' list of banned ingredients isn't the end-all be-all. Also, beware that this section sometimes comes with those higher price tags that gave Whole Foods its name, Whole Paycheck. As long as you keep an eye on both the ingredients and the price, the verdict here is that packaged foods can definitely still be worth it at Whole Foods. And finally, the hot bar, unfortunately, is just full of ingredients that I personally wouldn't want to eat. On top of that, it's one of the highest profit margin areas for the store, so it tends to be pretty pricey as you're paying for convenience. So for those reasons, my verdict here is that the hot bar is not worth it. Clearly, for better and for worse, Whole Foods is not the same store that it was back in its early days. From an economic standpoint, it's still meeting consumer demand in a unique way, and that has inherent value. My take is that it's a worthy destination for specific foods where quality is key, but as a shopper, you still need to be an informed consumer. Additionally, I'll always vouch for buying local whenever possible, especially if you can source in season produce from something like your local farmer's market. The fastest way to make a change is to vote with your dollars. So, whether you're shopping at Whole Foods or elsewhere, I would encourage you to make sure that the food that you're buying is coming from good sources and has quality ingredients. I hope this deep dive helped you to feel more empowered the next time that you step through the Whole Foods stores. If you have any questions or have another store in mind that you'd like me to analyze next, please drop it in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.